Hey, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be sharing the top 7 business mistakes that new filmmakers and video creators make. As I've had the privilege to work with hundreds of video business owners over the years, I've had the unique opportunity to really get a detailed perspective of what does and doesn't work. But not only this, having worked in the film and video industry myself for over 10 years, I've had my fair share of mistakes. I started out in TV dramas and feature films as an assistant, then went freelance as a videographer. Then I worked with several broadcasters as a shooting producer-director, and now I focus on producing content for brands and broadcasters like National Geographic, Discovery Channel, Airbnb and Sony. So although I've had some success with my career, I've also had my fair share of mistakes, and some were easy to learn from and others were extremely costly. But they were all important nonetheless, and as Warren Buffett says, it's good to learn from your mistakes, but it's better to learn from other people's mistakes. So my hope with this video is to save you from what I consider to be some of the most common and costly mistakes that video business owners make. So without further ado, let's get started. Mistake number 1 is creating passion projects or working for free with no ideal customer in mind. In the early stages of a business, it's usually necessary to do some work for free or at cost, but one of the biggest mistakes that I see is when people don't give enough thought to the purpose of the project and whether or not it aligns with their business goals. When I first started, my business plan was simply to create videos. And funnily enough, that's exactly what I did for the first few months of my business. In doing so, I built up a very broad portfolio, ranging from real estate and travel to sports and weddings. If you've watched my video on finding your niche, you'll know that this is not a good approach. For a business to succeed, they need to be highly targeted in their approach to become well known in their niche. It wasn't until I defined my business roadmap with my mentor that I was able to decide where I was and where I wanted to go. Once I knew the direction I wanted my business to go in and who my ideal clients were, I could steer the ship in the right direction. That means only taking the projects that are aligned with your goals and ambitions. This is a mistake that I see so many new filmmakers make, taking on any and every project that comes their way and getting bogged down in low-paying work that doesn't really help them progress. If you're doing something at cost or for free, make sure it aligns with your ideal clients and helps your business grow. The second mistake I see people make is sending proposals. And yes, you heard me right, sending a proposal is almost always a mistake, because most video business owners do it for the wrong reasons. To illustrate this, let's begin by picturing a typical scenario. A company reaches out to you because they need a video. Someone in the company, usually in the marketing department, has been tasked with finding a supplier who can deliver what they think they need at the best price. They've spoken to 3 or 4 other video suppliers to get a good picture of the market and find out what video costs. You speak with them on the phone, or even worse, by email, and they probably give you a brief. But before you know it, they're saying to you, please send us a proposal. And the implication is that if you do send a proposal, you've got a good chance of landing the job. Now, the first thing that can happen is that the company already has someone in mind, perhaps someone that they've worked with before, or a friend or a nephew. But the company has to request a certain number of proposals to get a picture of the price and give the appearance of fair game. The second thing that can happen is that you enter a race to the bottom, where whoever provides the cheapest quote wins. Creating and sending a proposal takes a good portion of your time, so this is not a game that you want to play. I may be sounding overly cynical here, but the reality is many video creators make too many assumptions and don't speak to the client long enough before jumping in and saying yes to a proposal. Instead, you need to be replacing proposals with real conversations. Never say yes to a proposal unless you've acquired all of the information you need about the project and you've decided that it's a good fit to move forward. But even then, you should be aiming to get at least verbal confirmation from the client that they're happy with everything that you've discussed so far. Then, once everything else is in place, you may want to send a 1-page proposal simply outlining what you've talked about and formalizing the deal. The third mistake that I see people make is relying too heavily on referrals. Like many filmmakers, I first started my business when I heard of a friend who needed a video. The project went well, and then they recommended me to another friend and another, and the cycle continued for a time. In fact, sometimes there would be too much work and I'd employ new people to help with growing the business. But then there would be quiet patches where work would dry up, and as a result, my business was like a roller coaster, going through intense periods of work followed by silent patches. The other problem with referrals is that you have very little control over who your clients are and the type of work that you're doing. As I mentioned in the first mistake, you want to be doing work with your ideal customers so that you're building your business in the direction that you want. If you just take any and every job that comes your way, you're sort of just going with the direction of the wind with no real control. Although word of mouth can be a good way to get started, it quickly becomes clear that it's not a healthy or reliable way to grow a business. Once you've done a few jobs through referrals, it's time to start putting systems in place so that your business can grow consistently. If you look at the sales process like a funnel, you want plenty of leads going in at the top so you have adequate paying customers arriving at the bottom. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that because things are going well at one time, that they'll continue to do so. But the best time to start building your sales and marketing strategy is always now. The fourth mistake I often see is people investing too heavily in equipment early on. When I first started, the first thing I did was buy a camera, tripod, lenses, and all the accessories. But this immediately put me into debt and meant that I couldn't invest in the things that turned out to be really important, like my sales and marketing. The pressure was on to pay off the equipment by any means possible, and so I broke one of my #1 rules by taking on any and every job that came my way. Because I had a camera and I was just getting started, I was working at lower rates, which meant either I wasn't paying myself or I wasn't charging enough to pay off the equipment. I quickly became known as someone who had a camera, and so that attracted a lot of low-paying work. As a result, my schedule filled up with a lot of these cheap jobs, and I didn't have time to work on bringing in work that was aligned with my goals and ambitions. I had unintentionally thrown myself into this role of camera operator and was probably better off just getting a regular job, which would have just been less stressful and better paid. So what is it that I would have done differently? Well, I wouldn't have gone into debt for equipment, that's for sure. And renting equipment is so easy these days that it makes far greater business sense. When you consider that rental companies charge around 2% of the retail price of a piece of equipment, it's far less risky and much better for your cash flow. If you can wait until you've got paying jobs coming in that will not only just pay your rate, but will also pay for the equipment on top, then you'll be in a much better position, and it won't be like taking a gamble, which is what you're doing if you're just buying the kit without having the work first. Don't forget too that camera bodies depreciate faster than anything else. So what's to say that the piece of kit that you buy now will be the right piece of kit for the job for the next one around the corner? Even now, I prefer renting to owning because it gives me far more options for each job, and it makes me think twice before taking work that's below my preferred rate. If it's a job worth doing, it's a job worth renting for. The fifth mistake that I see people make is trying to do everything themselves. When you start out working with limited budgets and resources, it's easy to fall into the trap of trying to do everything. In part, this is because the barriers to entry in the film and video industry are so low. Everyone owns a video-capable camera of some sort. Most people's laptops are capable of editing, sound equipment is cheaper than it's ever been, and so on. When it comes down to it, it's easy to try and do all the work yourself, either because it seems like it will save you money or because you'll enjoy it. Enjoying it is a legitimate reason to want to do it yourself, but if you want to really grow your business, you need to stop thinking like a business operator or employee and start thinking like a business owner. If you're constantly taking on every creative, sales, and admin task in the business, you won't be maximizing your own abilities and making the best of your time, money, and resources. In my experience, editing was the big black hole that took up all of my time, and on average, I'd spend multiple days per week cutting client projects. It felt productive at the time, but in hindsight, I should have been focusing on other aspects of the business, like the sales and marketing. When I finally realized that I was the bottleneck and I actually hired an editor, then my business started to take off because I was starting to act as a business owner rather than an operator. The sixth mistake is not budgeting correctly or fully understanding the finances of the business. As an employee in a regular job, you only have 1 or 2 revenue streams to think about, and they're fairly consistent, paid on the same day every month. Even in an economic downturn, there's a good chance you'll still get paid by your employer. As a business owner, on the other hand, you've got multiple revenue streams to consider, tens or even hundreds of clients to contend with, more complex taxes to account for, perhaps paying off equipment, subscriptions, variable travel expenses, and so many other things. It would be impossible to hire other people if you didn't have a good financial forecast. If you apply the same mindset and approach as you would as an employee, then your business will almost certainly fail. As a business owner, you have to have a detailed cash flow statement and profit and loss so that you're always on top of your finances. You need to know how much money you have coming into your account over the coming months and projections for 12 and 24 months' time at the very least. I like to have a best, a realistic and a worst case scenario budget so I can always see what's happening now and what I need to do to meet my targets. If things aren't going well, it can be easy to want to ignore these reports, but the only way to recover and ensure growth is to have a financial map. Once you've got the report set up, it only needs to take 20 minutes per week to make sure you have all the information you need to make more informed decisions. My seventh and final mistake on the list today is not spending enough time on business development. As a creative business owner, it's so easy to get immersed in the creative tasks, but you can end up working in the business much like an employee rather than on the business. It's a bit like running a car into the ground without taking the time to add fuel or do maintenance and upgrades. When you spend all of your time in the business, work can dry up. And when you realize this, it's too late. When this happens, we're forced to look for quick wins and easy solutions. But in business, they just don't exist. The sales and marketing need to be an ongoing effort, started well in advance, because things like these take a long time to grow, much like planting seeds. You can't pick the fruit until you've spent the time and the care looking after the plant. Before I run out of metaphors, in practical terms, what this means is talking to clients on a daily basis and focusing on building good relationships. It means putting sales and marketing strategies in place so you're not relying on referrals. It means working with an ideal customer in mind, not trying to do everything yourself, and always staying on top of your finances. When you do these things, you create an environment where your business has room to grow, and you're able to serve your clients better because you're in control. These are some of the key mistakes that I've made over the years, and I regularly see other people making too. They're easy to fall into, and if you have, don't worry. Mistakes are valuable lessons, and it's better to make them early on while the stakes are lower. If we're not making mistakes, then we're not learning and growing. A smart person learns from their mistakes, but a wise person learns from others. I hope that by me sharing these mistakes with you today, you might be able to avoid some of them too, and save yourself much of the trial and error that can be involved in starting and running a business. If you found this video useful, I'd love to know in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.